making this video about the upcoming solar eclipse in Leo that's happening on September the 1st, 2016. This is going to be in Leo, where Sun and Moon come together. It'll be a very concentrated eclipse. Rahu is about 18 degrees of Leo, and the Sun will get eclipsed at about 15. So this is a very exact eclipse. And it's going to be in the nakshatra of Purva Falguni. That nakshatra is ruled by a god called Bhagha, the god of delight. And it's a section of Leo that is related to reaping the benefits of being the king and being the sovereign. So Leo is a sign of dominion, government, centralized power in our life. And that includes what we want to contribute, the wealth we have, the vision that we bring forth. Hopefully those things aren't separate. Hopefully our sense of dignity and purpose and course of our life is also tied to our money and the real power that we wield, our duties and responsibilities. Leo is ruled by the Sun, of course, and the Sun is the one who rules that area of life, the graha, or the planet that produces those Leo effects. And so with the Sun eclipsed, or anytime the Sun is eclipsed, there's always a reorganization of our power structures in ourself individually and in the world collectively, of course, because we live in an integrated world. And the disruptions and the confusion and the shadow issues that we will face have to do with governments and how our world is being managed by those in power. Of course, we see so many disruptions and shakeups in that area of life now. Not surprising. So this eclipse is going to force us to really examine, culturally and globally, what kind of world we want to commit to. And again, it's Rahu that's eclipsing the Sun in Leo, and Ketu, the south node, is in Aquarius. So the dynamic between Rahu and Ketu, usually the Rahu end of the node is what's getting activated. So it's like a new source of personal power as an individual, and like I said, having your work and your power structures connected with your, actually sort of linked up and in alignment with your money and your vision. And then this, on a global scale, how our governments and our culture reflect those things. But we're focusing more on the individual and on on whether or not that individual and that, like, let's say our personal government, like let's say if I live in the US, how my government is working. Whereas Ketu in Aquarius is more about culture, let's say other countries, other people. This is how the node works. It works this axis. And the Rahu end is usually much more active. So this is the Sun being eclipsed by Rahu in Leo. So we're seeing much more of the Leo energy. When we look in the world, we can see a couple months ago in England, very stark example of this. Rahu was in Leo. Jupiter was also still in Leo. And they voted that Brexit to leave the EU. This is exactly what I just said. So we can see the rise of nationalism in the world. We see it in the United States with candidates such as Trump giving rise to more nationalistic tendencies where it's like, I'm all about me and my country, my power, keeping immigrants out and all of that kind of thing. There's a real drive toward that, and this eclipse in Leo is going to really blow that issue up and really make us have to get serious about, is this really what we want? Is this really the solution? Can we actually go back? Can we be protectionist? Can we actually go back to a non-integrated world where we sort of keep them all out somehow, or some version of that? At least politically, we're seeing these kinds of things. Personally, we're seeing, and again, that's because it's pushed toward the Rahu end of the node, the Rahu in Leo. 6 months from now, it's going to be more toward the Ketu in Aquarius. It'll be Ketu eclipsing the sun in Aquarius. And it'll be more about the, more about the collective, less about the individual. So these are some universal themes, at least about Rahu eclipsing the sun in Leo. Again, Purva Falguni is that part of Leo that is connected to the ruling class. Let's put it that way. Ruled by the god Bhaga, the god of delight, where we delight in having power. And look at all of the conversations that we're having about the ruling class. This nakshatra is about the corruption of the ruling class. Make no mistake about it. That's what it is. As I say all the time when I talk about Purva Falguni, it's good to be king, and if being king means that we then gobble up all the resources for ourselves, then eventually the kingdom falters and the kingdom fails, because a good kingdom and a good king shares the wealth with the kingdom and sees that everyone prospers. Right now, for instance, one of the big political stories in the U.S. is all of the stuff with Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation and the corruption at the top, and Trump uses this rhetoric. Of course, Trump also represents the same thing. I mean, he's not a good messenger for this, because he was a donor to all of these people. He bought influence for years. Now he's trying to say, I'm going to not do that anymore, but questions about him too. And so the elite cashing in, and this kind of, all of these issues have to do with Purva Falguni. Of course, we had Bernie Sanders, the sort of anti-establishment candidate, the only one who is anti-establishment. Trump is anti-establishment in rhetoric only. He's so establishment just from the other end. But Bernie Sanders was the total anti-establishment, where he's like, get all the money out of politics. Right? So again, this whole corruption of the ruling class has to do with Purva Falguni on the government scale. On a personal scale, it's the same thing. Once you get power, once you have power, it's easy to just enjoy the power and keep as much of it for yourself and enjoy it and become lazy. There's a part of Leo that's quite lazy, especially with power, with luxury, and a sense of entitlement. First nakshatra in Leo is Magha, where we're ruled by the divine ancestors, the Pitris, the universal gods, the rishis, where we're literally sitting on the throne, and we are literally a king, and not necessarily a worldly king, but the king of our mind and consciousness. And the next one is Purva Falguni, which, again, once we become that king, we can be very generous and want to share it with the kingdom. That's the virtuous quality of Purva Falguni. But of course, we live in a corrupt world, so we can always find the corrupt possibility by looking at the world. This is why I talk about world events when I talk about these updates, because we can always see the corrupt possibility. It's not the only possibility, but the world is corrupt. We don't live in the Sat Yuga. We don't live in an enlightened era, so we can see these things magnified by looking at the world. I mean, are these not the biggest themes we're dealing with right now? And have been. And we have been since Jupiter went into Leo, and then Rahu especially went into Leo with Jupiter early this year, in January. So look at how these things are really coming to the forefront now. So this eclipse in Purva Falguni is going to bring those themes out as well. And really challenge us to look at our own abuses of power, our own cronyism, our own sort of abuse of authority. There's a story in this nakshatra. The god is called Bhagha. And there's a story that illustrates, and it doesn't really illustrate it this way, but you have to read into the implications of what is said in these stories. The story of Lord Shiva and his first wife Sati, and how she immolated herself, burned herself in the sacrificial fire of her father Daksha, because he wouldn't honor Lord Shiva. It's a long story, I don't want to tell the whole story, but Lord Shiva's first wife, her father didn't honor Shiva, and she actually made fun of Shiva, and she had this big, what's called yagya, or fire ceremony. It's like a big celebration, and didn't invite Shiva, and didn't invite the daughter either. So the daughter kind of crashed the party, and when she got there, they were all laughing at Shiva. They were all making fun of him, but they were doing it kind of covertly. Meaning, just like you see politicians, they don't come out and say, we're going to screw you and take all the money. No, no, no. A policy initiative has been put forth, and then when you look at it, it's all this hidden corruption, and with a nod and a wink, they kind of do it that way. And I say that intentionally because the wink part is related to Purva Falguni and Bhaga, because what happened is after Lord Shiva's wife burned herself in the fire, Lord Shiva became distraught, and he went to that yagya, the fire ceremony, and he saw all these gods sitting around. One of them was Bhaga, and he saw Bhaga winking at Daksha when they were talking about Shiva. And that wink, it's like a, sure, yeah, we're going to take care of the blacks. Yeah, we're going to make our Muslim policy more humane. Yeah, more humane. Yeah, that wink. And so Shiva poked his eyes out. So this is one of the things with Bhaga, and with this nakshatra, it has to do with the eyes, because Shiva poked Bhaga's eyes out because Bhaga winked. And there's another deity called Pushan. He smiled. He smiled. So Shiva knocked his teeth out. So he's said to be toothless, and Bhaga is blind. So these are also indicators of health issues that can happen when planets are in these nakshatras, by the way. But this story is very interesting because it's that conspiratorial wink of entitlement that politicians advance, and the way they kind of speak, and they say these things like dog whistles, dog whistle politics, where they'll say things so certain groups recognize, oh, that's what he's talking about. So notice these themes, not just in the world, but in your life. How do you do it as well? How do you exclude people who are of a different strata? How can you be more inclusive? Now, this is big because these are themes for the next 6 months or so. These eclipses are where the nodal axis is sitting there. The nodal axis is sitting in Leo. It has been since January, but the nodal axis doesn't really become so active until we start having eclipses, right? So we have eclipses, and that really fires off the next 6 months of that energy. The next, real lesson of what is the big shadow theme of the world, you would say, that we're dealing with. I did research a couple years ago and found that this transit was also associated with decapitation, Rahu eclipsing the sun. When the Reign of Terror happened in France in whenever that was, Robespierre, and at the end of the French Revolution, I think it was 1789 or something like that. It started when Rahu eclipsed the sun in Leo and ended when Rahu eclipsed the sun in Leo. I have the research on those dates somewhere. Rahu, the day, and the eclipse passed over Paris. So I say this because all the beheadings and stuff that we've seen in the world, we might see some of that here soon. I mean, there might be another level to it. Maybe even in a Western country or something like that. I don't know. I don't like to make those kind of predictions, but Rahu eclipsing the sun, especially in Leo, because I've seen it before, has to do with decapitations. And solar eclipses in general can have to do with that. So in addition to that, we have a few other very interesting things that are happening in the sky. Saturn is also in directly aspecting this eclipse, which makes it as dark as it could be on some level, because Saturn in Scorpio is also aspecting his 10th house aspect onto this eclipse. Literally, like, to the degrees, 15 degrees, Saturn is directly aspecting this eclipse of the sun. The sun is 15 Leo, Saturn is 15 Scorpio. Couldn't be more direct. And Mars is not far away. So again, we could see a lot of control themes, especially right around the eclipse. We could definitely see some cataclysmic destructive acts. And by the way, we often see earthquakes and seismic activity around eclipses. I'm recording this on, the 24th, I think, and we just had an unfortunate earthquake in Italy. It's not unusual to see this, especially in fixed signs. There are clear indicators that show for increased seismic activity. Of course, when we get near eclipses, that's one. And also when planets are in fixed signs, when you get Saturn and Mars, or any of the outer planets very closely joined, what's called planetary war. All those things are happening within this season. So there's a lot of intensity going on right now. We could definitely see the U.S. political race shift a little bit and get even more polarized. So we also have a Jupiter-Venus-Mercury conjunction in Virgo. So at the time of the eclipse, Mercury has turned retrograde. Now Mercury retrograde is not unusual, but it's definitely a time to really reflect and ponder what's happening when Mercury goes retrograde, especially as it relates to the messages that we're getting, particularly from the power structures in the world, because that's what Virgo is. After the kingdom and the power of Leo, we have all the details of Virgo. Virgo is the sign where all that power from the kingdom needs to be organized in specific, precise ways. So at the time of the eclipse, and very shortly, even before that, we have Mercury, Venus, and Jupiter in Virgo. So this is also what's called Saraswati Yoga, when you get those three planets joined that relate to the goddess Saraswati. So it's a very creative time, aside from all the intensity. It's a very creative time for all of us. And especially to do things that are precise, technical. It's good for my course, because I'm in the midst of launching my certification course, finishing up the registration. So it's a great time to be studying astrology and studying those kinds of things. We'll see that. You'll see people get more focused on that. And if you're wondering, if you're thinking about taking my course, you might suddenly go, you know what? Wow, you're right. This is a great thing to do. Because it's, Jupiter in Virgo, very much about aligning that high teachings with accurate details, so that we're not just believing blindly in things, like just believing astrology works but not really knowing how. After a while, we're curious. We want to know. That's Mercury. So Mercury in Virgo, very good with that. Venus in Virgo. Of course, it's easy to focus on the fact that it's debilitated there, but that just means that we have a hard time enjoying certain things, or that kind of high desire tends to calm down. It's not the worst thing, by the way. I tend to find that debilitated Venus, of all of the planets in low dignity, especially when it's in Virgo, it's really not so bad, frankly, especially for getting out of the, soulmate fascination that we seem to be driven by so much. When Venus goes into Virgo, we kind of stop doing that for a while, we might feel bad because we don't have a partner or we don't have a lot of satisfaction with our partner, but we can focus on other things for a while. Not the worst thing in the world, frankly, at least some of the time. So this Saraswati Yoga in Virgo can really bring a lot of creativity and a lot of joy in being creative, and especially like around your home and in your environment, your immediate environment where you want to clean and organize and purify. Be very good for that for the next couple weeks, actually. So if you find this, that you've been wanting to just throw everything out lately, this is why. First of all, Jupiter went into Virgo, Mercury's there, then Venus is coming, so it can be a very creative process. And again, like I say, there's a lot of power to focus on. If you're living a life aligned with purpose and vision, especially if you're like an entrepreneur or you're looking to really connect your purpose and vision, this is actually a very good transit. This is actually a very good time, this solar eclipse in Leo, because it's going to force you, like I said at the beginning, aside from the drama of the world, internalize these things as well. Instead of thinking, oh yeah, the world, so what do I do? Well, what you do is you connect with your own power and not wait for the world to save you. And make a decision and a choice that's humane and that is trying to preserve a worldview that you want. And again, that's the choice that we make. Do we want to preserve a worldview that is exclusive, that's protectionist, or some version of that, or something that's inclusive? And you as well. Are you more focused on your fears and your scarcity and like, well, I can't live my heart's desire because, well, you might not have enough money and I don't have the confidence and I'm just humble and all these things that just go nowhere, right? Leo is the part of you that doesn't buy all that nonsense, okay? You want to live full on. We all do. That's who we are. You're the glorious self. Like Swami Shivananda says. One of my favorite quotes ever is, don't die like a worm, roar like a lion of Vedanta, right? Like you're the immortal self. I think it says you're the immortal self. Don't bleat like a lamb, my karma, my karma, my karma. Roar like a lion of Vedanta. And then another one is don't die here like a worm. Those are two. But it's like we go around, oh, but my karma, but oh, I'm this way, and my child this, that. He's like, you're the immortal self. Roar like a lion of Vedanta. So it's basically saying you're not meant to live that way. That's not who you are inside. You can, all these things we do in our head. So eclipse in Leo is going to put it right in your face. And again, what these times do, especially with the aspect from Saturn, and it's big, is it makes us succumb to fear. We're all still, having to make a choice to not knuckle under to our fears, especially our irrational fears. Because Saturn is aspecting from Scorpio, which is our irrational fears, paranoid fears. And we're looking at these possibilities in the world, not thinking things through perhaps, not saying what are the implications. Am I going to just be manipulated by my paranoid fears? Like, let's say, fear of terrorism, fear of terrorists. Okay, that's happening in the world. But is the only solution to, let's say, keep them all out, or they're taking over our country, they're going to wipe us out? This is just way conflated, frankly. And other kinds of things. And this is why we're in this right now. And this Saturn, for instance, aspecting Sun, Rahu in Leo, Sun is powerful there. And the Sun is not the part of us that says, I'm going to knuckle under to my paranoid fear. Or at least the part of us that doesn't want to do that. Now again, the Sun is being eclipsed by Rahu, which is also confusing. So this is why astrology helps us, is to be able to untangle this and say, what's going on here, right? What are the different threads here? And what's the challenge? Why are we being challenged this way? And what's the real opportunity underneath all of that? The opportunity is that no matter what, the Sun is the Sun. And it gets obscured by eclipses and things. But then it moves on. These things change. And for instance, right now, I'll say in the US, like we're on the brink of making a decision about a leader that's going to affect the entire world, affect our country for 4 years, but we're still at a moment in time. This is a moment in time where we're being challenged to really see some things clearly, but the moment will definitely pass. And then we'll have other times that we're going to have to live with the consequences of what we're looking at right now. And the pressure is pressure is starting to grind closer and closer. And we're starting to see some realities of how people are looking at, like, let's say the US election, of how people are really seeing this now. So in your own life, there's also obviously comparisons between whether you're living full on, whether you're knuckling under to your irrational fears of, well, I can't do this because, you know, you can't make money at that, or this or that, or let's say it's about relationship. Well, I can't go back because I'm not respected and appreciated, or I did that or didn't do that, or I don't know, whatever, however you're dealing with this power issue in your life. Most people, they rely on confidence to get them through things, which is the kind of shadow version of the sun. And I say the shadow version because confidence is wavering. We're confident in the things we've done before. We're not confident in the things we haven't. And confidence goes up and down. Confidence is not aligned with vision and purpose. In fact, again, our comfort zone exists our growth exists outside of that comfort zone. Confidence is in your comfort zone. Like, for instance, with a parent, the example that I use a lot, the parent doesn't say, well, I just don't have the confidence to, step up and give a speech to my son's, Boy Scouts or whatever. I don't have the confidence. Let's say you're insecure about something like that, but something needs to be said. If it's important enough to you, you'll overcome your confidence if you love your child more. I don't have the confidence to do this thing. This is why having children, for example, really extend us and teach us about our capacities, because we love them more than we love our failure story, than we love our victim story. Well, I would just be humble over here, and I don't have the confidence to do that. All that stuff goes out the window when we have kids, because we love them more than that. We don't love ourselves as much, or we don't have as much confidence in ourselves. Again, that word confidence. But when you're aligned with vision, something that you want to contribute, something that's bigger than that, then you have to step into something bigger, or else it won't happen. And it won't happen unless you love that thing more. So this is why people fail their careers, fail themselves in a higher way. And they're always back and forth, back and forth. They start it, then as soon as they run into resistance, they retreat, they stop. Frankly, it's because, if you're doing this, it's because you don't love that thing. You don't love it. You love your story more than you love the contribution. Those, I'll say of us, because I've managed to find something that I love, thank God. Like with astrology and all, there are many things that I don't feel like doing, but it doesn't stop me because I'm not asking that question. Do I want to do it? Am I confident enough to do it? Whatever. That's not the question. The question is, what's the best thing I can do? And I have to try that. I have to try to do the best thing I can do. Whether I'm confident, whether it's easy, whether it feels good, whether I make a mistake, whether I look stupid, whether I get a bunch of people flaming me on YouTube with a bunch of nasty comments, people not liking, all the reasons everybody else doesn't do things. I don't like them either, frankly. I don't like it either. But it doesn't stop me, and it shouldn't stop you. And it doesn't stop people. The reason people succeed in something higher is because they're committed to something higher. And the reason they're committed to it is because they love it. Love is the only answer. Love is the only real thing. And we're all a product of what we love in direct proportion. We either love our vision or we love our story about why we can't do it. What are you loving? What do you love more? Your vision or your story about why you can't do it? What do you love more? Your child or your story about why you can't provide for the child? You see the difference? The parent doesn't let their insecurity stop them from providing for their child. So these are big Leo themes. It's what fills your heart. So this has gone a little long, but I hope you enjoyed it. And it's a big time. These are big things to ponder for the next 6 months. big. And this is why it's easy to say, all of the planets are energies of love, actually. All of them. They're all facets of divine love. All the planet signs, houses. It's easy to say, well, Cancer, that's love. Libra, Taurus, they're love. They're feminine, they're emotion, they're more feeling, but the love of contribution, the sun is the source of all of it. Look at the sun in the sky, just giving, so we all can live with no expectation of praise. We never praise the sun, we never even think about it. But that's the source of all life. And that's the source of life in you, or the part of you that wants to give without expectation of reward, just because you love to give, just because giving is the best game in town. I think Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of nonviolent communication, said that. That's because giving is the best thing we've ever figured out. We figured out the best thing humans can do is give to each other. It's so natural. That's all we really want to do, is give the best we have. That's the purity of the sun, and what Leo is all about too, is wanting to give the best we have. And this is why everybody gets so jacked up around politics and all, because it's deep stuff. And it's because we think this is the best. We're like, and when we see it corrupted, or we feel like it's being corrupted, it hurts us. Almost like a child being injured by a parent, or by something that we think should be there to be a force of good. So don't let it grind you down. Don't let it beat you down. Don't let it hold you back. Recommit even more deeply to that vision of the world that you want to create. Because that's the other thing, is there is no such thing as culture and the world. They're just a bunch of individuals. Culture is not a given. Culture is an open-ended equation. Culture is a bunch of individuals. And we are the culture. We are the culture. The culture becomes what we are as individuals. And cultures change because individuals change. So you have to be that change. That's the big challenge. To be that change authentically from within the joy that you have to share, not from within the fear, what you're afraid of losing, or the messages that are coming at you from the outside trying to control you and keep you in place. So evolve and flower and grow that way. That's the big challenge right now, and you'll find that you're going to run into your issues related, like I said, to like, well, I can't grow and be all I can be because, and then the story starts. And it really boils down to the confidence or vision thing. Confidence or purpose. You're going to say, I don't have the confidence, I can't do it because... And then the purpose thing needs to kick in that says, but none of that is real, because there's this big thing that I could do. Focus on that.